Welcome to this week's episode of The Capitalist Investor. As always, you have Diamond Hands D, Tony the Tiger, you got me, Cool Hand Luke, and we actually have a special guest today, Mike Hudzinski. He is one of our clients, also a patent attorney by trade. Mike, give us a quick intro. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me, gentlemen. My name is Mike Hudzinski. I'm with the law firm Tucker Ellis, LLP in Cleveland. I'm a patent attorney there, specializing in software patents, electrical and electromechanical patent work.
Yeah. Well, we're excited to have you for the next week on our next 3 episodes, this one and the next 2. A lot of things in the AI tech space, they all need patents, right? They all need attorney looking over what's going on, especially in this innovative world we're living in, this environment we're heading into. So today we're going to focus on that kind of AI aspect that we always hear, around the news cycle. I feel like we can't run away. And everyone's talking about Nvidia, AI, chips, the future of what that looks like. And one thing I was, talking to you about, Mike, before is I was trying to patent algorithms back in the day for trading the financial markets. And I liked one of the things you were telling me before about how there's certain things you can patent or can't patent around an algorithm. Can you tell us a little bit about that? Because maybe there's certain listeners out there that are listening to this that want to get involved in the AI space. And they're like, maybe I have this cute, crazy good thing and I just don't know if I can patent it.
That's right. You can't patent a naked algorithm basically because it can be performed by a human. So essentially you would be patenting a human who would be performing that algorithm. So the algorithm needs to have some sort of extra result that would happen by virtue of executing the algorithm that couldn't happen basically by a human using paper, pen, pencil, and calculator.
Yeah. I mean, I remember when I was going through engineering school, I went through C programming.
Right.
I don't even know if that's probably obsolete at these days. But you were writing code.
Right.
And these codes can get extremely complicated and very long.
That's right.
And all you need to do is change one minus sign or a plus sign, and it's different.
It's different.
Right? So
it's
is that
different.
Another reason why you really can't patent? It's and plus you always want to increase it, not increase it, but make it better. And so is version 2 then patent? And you just have to keep on making patent. Help me understand that.
Okay, so you're talking about the difference really between novelty and patentability.
Okay.
So there's 2 different pieces of software could be novel relative to each other, but does the difference rise to the level of a patentable difference? Is that an invention to make a small minor change to the software from one version to another to rise to warrant federal patent right protection? And that question is answered basically based on obviousness. Would version 2 be obvious in version 1 to an ordinary programmer of ordinary skill in the art?
That's so attorney talk. I love it.
You put that at 10,000 foot level so we can understand
I've had
it.
talks with attorneys, and they're like, well, I love it.
When you said two lines of code, I'm guessing it's not patentably distinct. It could be novel because it's 2 pieces of code. Now, if you tell me that those 2 pieces of code result in a 20% difference in time required to process the data, okay, now you have some kind of result that might not be obvious. Well, the result speaks to whether the change would have been obvious to one of ordinary skill in the art, and the ordinary skilled person would be another programmer, maybe in another company. And the question is then why wouldn't that person in that company have made the same change? Because it's not obvious.
Right.
But you could point to the net result of that small change in the output.
Yeah. What if, here's one thing I'm really wondering about. We haven't got to the point where AI can program itself. All right. What if we get to the point where AI starts to program itself, write its own code? Can technology itself be patentable when technology writes it?
Yeah, so there's some new federal regulations that I've been looking at, and the answer is going to be no. There has to be a human involved, and United States Code 35 USC says it has to be basically a human.
Human that writes it, yeah.
Yeah, a human that writes it and implements it. The claimed subject matter has to be invented by a human.
I mean, if I spent a week, a month, a year writing some code that changed the world, I'd want to patent it.
Yeah,
I mean, but like I said, all somebody would need to do is take that 1,000-page of code and change a plus to a minus. It does something different, and now it's obsolete or changed or not patented again, right?
That's right. And technology moves forward.
And I'd be really upset because 99.999% of that is all of me, and,
Right.
and I got blown out of the water. That's what I was.
Well, but what I'm also saying is that incremental difference, the little incremental difference, itself separately patentable, and I would suggest it might not be for your competitor who made that changes. I think
right.
Yeah.
I mean, it's kind of like generic soap or something, right? It's
That's
like
right.
I'm going to
That's
steal, Perel's whatever thing and change an ingredient, and now it's mine.
Yeah,
right?
sort of like reverse engineering somebody else's work
Yeah,
and then
exactly.
trying to improve upon it.
Improve upon it, or just change it slightly so it's not the quote unquote the same, right?
That's right. To change it slightly is to try to avoid infringement of the patent owner's rights.
So we've talked about, like, we go down these conspiracy theory paths.
Here we go.
It's so fun, and here we go. So let's talk about the errors of AI, because I mean, we can talk about how it's going to implement the economy, and I can spin that too. But the errors. So I one of the talks that we had a few podcasts ago, there was an attorney that got in trouble. I don't know if he was like, again, I don't remember like if it was like an attorney going through law school or an attorney that was like writing a case, and they dug up something through AI, and AI changed. Like, they pulled up the case and changed the verdict to like make it, he was quoting a case and it was all wrong. Like he changed, the AI changed the verdict, and the guy ran with it, and something like, dude, that was not how that case ran out. Like, where'd you get this information?
That's right.
I got it from this computer. So, I mean, it's still not perfect, right?
It is not perfect, and students do the same thing with term papers. And so, they're found out. Some images that are produced, using generative AI,
right?
They are incomplete. You have, 3-fingered models and people with, partially formed whatever, because they're collecting data from a model and putting together some sort of thing that's generated from maybe an incomplete or inaccurate data set.
Right.
And so that's kind of what happens. And when attorneys rely upon it, it's kind of bad. What you're supposed to do is go back and they call it spade the brief, which is, look up that case and see if
check it.
Spot check it, yeah. I think students have the same problem, like I said.
Yeah.
Well, it goes back to the copyright kind of thing. You said
that's
technology can't patent technology, that if technology writes it has to be human. It's the same thing with copyright. I've heard that kind of philosophy is the same, and that kind of is becoming the kind of the norm too, where you have to have a human write something to be copyrightable.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay,
that's right.
That's interesting because people are using ChatGPT to write term papers or to write books even. I mean, you can write a 100-page book now by typing in just a couple prompts, and if that's the case, everyone's going to be writing their own book, right?
Well, and we were going to kind of lead into like how AI implements into the economy, legal, patents, technology, manufacturing.
Right.
And I can understand that it makes things faster, more efficient, cost efficient. To me, honestly, that sounds like job destruction. Honestly, it's going to eliminate jobs.
Well,
Is
I think
anyone
that's
else on board with that?
Well, I think that's a conversation for our next podcast. It's coming up here in a couple of days when we're talking about actually public sector versus private sector jobs. Right?
That's right.
But I do think that's touched on it quickly on this, and we could dig deeper on the next one. I think that is absolutely going to happen. And plus, especially if one company owns a certain patent, I mean, can't you be almost a monopoly on top of that, and then that also goes into the job market?
Yeah. Well, patents are a monopoly for a finite term.
Interesting.
And so you have the right to exclude others from making, using, selling, importing the thing that is patented. So you do have a personal, or your company has an entity right in that monopoly. And the way the patent system works just overall is that in exchange for disclosing your invention to the public, which it's published, you have the right to exclude others from making, using, selling, or importing the thing that's patented. So it is a monopoly.
Yeah. What's the shelf life on a patent? Like 30
20
years?
years from filing.
20 years? Okay.
So like Nvidia, like some of their I'm sure they have thousands.
They have thousands of patents, yeah.
So like basically they could, if they have a breakthrough technology, they could be the main player in the game for 20 years on that one technology.
That's right. But technology moves forward.
Right.
And
that's where I was like, you change a little bit of a code and it's
right.
different, right?
That's right. And I'm not sure who Nvidia's competitors are, and it's interesting to look at what kind of foundries do we have in this country that could compete with Nvidia moving forward with new sort of processor capabilities. Why they're so big now, I think, is because they were formerly like a graphics processor company. Yep. And the way the silicon kind of arranged itself aligned nicely with the algorithms used in AI. So there's a synergy between sort of the mathematics behind AI, the silicon used to implement the algorithms. So those sort of three things, the math, the software algorithms, and the silicon came together to propel Nvidia forward.
It's interesting. I was talking one
like the actual hardware to create the chip,
because something's doing the crunching.
Okay,
and it's silicon.
Yeah.
Right. Well, I was talking to some tech guy in New York earlier this week about how it's not Moore's law, it's another thing, but there's only so much density we can put on these chips.
Yeah, right.
And silicon can only be so fast. Like we basically have to create a new element for chips to become faster down the road, or it's going to not be able to. It's like a logarithmic line. It's not exponential. It's like it starts to peak, and you get a flat line down the road.
So like
that's where technology.
The speed of light is the fastest you can go to communicate data. But some of the graphics processors achieve speed by processing in parallel. So you have multiple sub-processors within the chip to split the data up into pipelines, process those pipelines together, and then spit out the output. And that's the genius behind the Nvidia technology.
Did you know that the new chips that everyone's talking about with Nvidia are like 10,000 pounds or like 1,000 pounds?
I did not know that.
They're like 10 feet long. They're like big. And I didn't know this. The data center, like these chips and data centers, are like huge.
Yeah,
that's how powerful these.
And we talked about that, about
are.
like how much energy it's going to take to power AI in the future.
Right. It's probably partially, the weight is partially the heat sink.
Yeah,
probably. Yeah, exactly. The cooling systems.
Yeah, no question.
That's right.
All right. Well, Mike, thanks for coming on for this specific podcast talking about AI around it. I know we're next one here in a couple of days. We're getting into public sector, private sector jobs around kind of the patent world and displacement, things like that. Also talk about some EVs here in a couple of podcasts, but we'll get to that next time. Thanks for everyone for tuning in. We'll see you next time.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah.
The opinions expressed in the podcast are for general informational purposes only and are not intended to provide specific advice or recommendations for any investment, legal, financial, or tax strategy. It is only intended to provide education about the financial industry. Please consult a qualified professional about your individual needs.